Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
But who wants to go to Denmark's boring? I mean, there's nothing really there. There's a couple windmills. Got a few creeks. What a museum or so.
It's liberal utopia. That's why they always want to go to Sweden and Denmark and Finland, is because it's where the socialism all works, right?
Yeah. Everybody rides a bike and does public transportation, Reagan.
Mm-hmm. They don't have guns, except Sweden, which has a lot of guns.
They do. Everybody has a gun.
Yeah.
Because they're next to Russia. That's why. They don't want to be invaded. Of course, they got to go through Finland to get to Sweden. But
my favorite is the switch that Democrats have done on Russia too. They're like, Russia's bad. They're trying to rig our elections, and then Trump's trying to deal with Russia, and they're like, whoa, how dare Trump? He's really tough on Russia and hurting their economy and their people. So it's just ridiculous.
It really is. Well, Reagan, it's good to be back in the saddle with you. It's been a bit.
Just 1 week.
You know. How's summer been going?
Summer has been good. It's coming to a close. We got to sort out what we're going to do for chickens, because our current setup is a coop, and then it has like an outside thing around it, like there for a walking area. But it gets really muddy because I live in the valley where it rains a bit, and so I'm trying to figure out something different. So I think we're going to put it in one of the horse stalls in the barn, actually, but got to do that before it starts to rain.
We were just in a heat dome. What? You're still getting rain over there?
There's a few inches projected for the upcoming fall, and honestly, it doesn't rain a ton in fall. It's winter and spring where it just pours. So hoping for some snow, though. I want snow. I'm a big fan of snow. Snow's better than rain.
Live in the wrong area for snow. You grew up in the right area, but
I did.
No,
that is exactly right.
Well, I thought, first off, I really thought yours and Dave's and Sam's discussion on the farmhouse stuff the farm stand stuff was very informative and good. I thought that was the three of you was probably good, because I think you start getting a fourth or a fifth person on a podcast, and it's kind of hard for everybody to kind of layer in some points. So I'd have just muddied the water. So you guys did good without me. I like Sam, though. She's got so much information, and she's just such a wealth of knowledge, and she's got that. Well, Dave's got the dry humor, like nobody's business, and then Sam's kind of got that quick wit that's kind of fun,
Yeah. No, it was a fun episode. I really enjoyed having them. There's lots more topics that we'll take up with them over the next few months and into next year, as we kind of do short session and policy. I mean, I think private property touches a lot of stuff. Touches water rights, touches housing, touches land use laws. Obviously, there's all kinds of things, agriculture, that get wrapped up in that. So really, the fact that it's kind of just the two of them out there fighting the fight for property owners. I mean, there isn't a lot else except for individual owners and their lawyers, right? So, I mean, they are very outmatched, and despite being likely outspent and outgunned in terms of manpower, they do a ton with what they've got there. So really impressed. They are expanding though, so the friends better watch out.
They're going to become friends of OPOA. Yeah, no, you're right. Property rights and I never really realized when you get really to the nitty gritty of property rights. And I heard this quote about communism. It was kind of went something like, when you take away people's right to own something, you're taking away their desire to fight for something.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't have ownership, if we don't have something that we own and we can call our little piece of rock, right? Then you're kind of like, what are you fighting for? Like, oh, why do you care? And I think that's really what a big tenet of what they fight for with that private property rights truly is a cornerstone of our Constitution and who America really is, right? I mean, whenever they do the land grabs, manifest destiny, I mean, you really think about how land and why it really mattered to Americans, and it's kind of ingrained in us, and you can't take it away, just overnight.
Nope. All right, going into topics, getting started. Bryan, I really like this article. I missed this one, July 31st, from Carlos Fuentes at the Oregonian. See which groups spent the most money lobbying in Oregon this legislative session, setting a 10-year record. So there's 11.4% increase from 29.5 million spent in 2023. So now we're up significantly at 32, almost 33 million dollars. And I wish I put the numbers in front of me, but I would love to compare like campaign spending of these groups and then to their lobbying expenditures and all that. And I mean, I'd say it's roughly equivalent in terms of effort. I mean, you see the folks at the top of the list. Oregon Business and Industry spent $387,000. Now this is staff and contract lobbyists. I mean, this is mostly just people, right? They're not producing a lot of stuff. I mean, they make one pagers and stuff that they send out, but like that's mostly people, right? For the cost for that 5-6 months. And so they were one of the big spenders. They're also one of the largest business givers in politics. Now, City of Portland is different because they do not spend money in election. Well, I guess they kind of do. Because they have a campaign finance system that is funded by taxpayers. So a little bit.
Sure.
They were very, very close at the second most at 376,000. And that just tells you what kind of crazy influence Portland has in what goes on in the capital. And it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. Well, they have lobbyists, or they're not really lobbyists. They're basically paid legislative people for kind of every section of where the city could be involved in, right? You could have somebody they have the one guy that does housing that I deal with, and they got, somebody that does, police, infrastructure, all those sort of different things. And so they're lobbying from policy down to trying to get money too. So they're spending a lot of time and effort there. I didn't see another city on there.
No, they mentioned the next closest is Hillsborough at 87,000.
Yeah.
And the League of Oregon Cities total. So all the other cities, the group that supposed to represent all the other cities spent 124,000. So a third of what Portland spent. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, it's an interesting list to look at. I think the collective amount of money that they all spent is really more the eye-popping scenario to me, that they spend that much money on lobbying, yet they don't spend that much money collectively on campaigns. I do find that an interesting statistic. So, I mean, collectively, we spend legislative campaigns last cycle were, I don't know, 10 million, give or take. The cycle before was a little bit more, we were probably more like 15 million, maybe somewhere in that range. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes unreported, but the reality is, though, it's a half or a third of what they spend lobbying. You would think that you'd spend a little bit more just getting the people you want in office.
Isn't 30 million about what we spent on the last governor's race between Johnson and Kotek and Drazen? I feel like it was in that range.
No, it was 20 million a piece for Kotek and Drazen.
Okay, all right, that's right.
Johnson wasn't far off from that pace either. So, yeah, the governor, it tells you how much power the governor has if there's 60 million being spent on a governor's race.
Yeah.
That ability to, affect change. And then she was on here too, which I thought was interesting. The office of the governor spent outside of, because I don't know how they track that with staff. I guess that's staff. So is that Bob's salary and then all the other people that work, or is it?
I don't know how that works. I didn't see the governor on here. Where are they at?
You have to see more, and then they go down there. So.
Oh, geez. That doesn't show up. Because I'm trying to beat
office of the governor, 115,000. So I wonder, they're tied with Nike basically. So you would think Nike would spend more. And then I think of I see OBI, and you got to assume that like Nike's a member of OBI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I almost feel like a little bit of that's double counting.
Some of it could be, or right, like OBI is going to give some money or I'm sorry, Nike's going to give some money to OBI, but it's more political money, and then I'm sure they have membership dues as well.
Yeah.
But they're representing the big group, and so sometimes that's Nike, but sometimes it may not be stuff Nike wants. So Nike still is big enough; they're going to have their own person. So it's still separate lobby teams, because it's not like Nike is paying OBI to be their lobbyist. They're part of a group that has lobbyists, and so Nike's lobbyist and expenditures are still probably going to be separate from that. Would be my guess.
My good friends at TriMet spent a lot of money, don't they?
They really want to justify their existence for sure.
Same with the universities. I find the people with their hand out the most spend the most on the legislature.
How much do the universities spend? Because it seems like they probably got the least bang for their buck.
Yeah, right. Well, U of O was number one, $217,000. U of O spent on lobbying. Then the Community College Association, $180,000. Portland State, $146,000. Yeah, there's a lot of money being
least
spent
return. Their higher ed continues to get smushed
and
by
just
most
like
of the
usual,
other priority.
Oregon State takes it in the shorts and doesn't even show up on the list. Come on, OSU. No wonder U of O's beating us on everything.
Maybe that just means they need to pay their lobbyists better. It's time to increase some old salary numbers. Maybe that's what it is.
Are you trying to make her happy, huh? Giving her a shout out. We'll have to ask Carlos. I like Carlos. I talked to him a decent amount. I think I'll have to see. It might be kind of interesting to do a reach out and kind of see a little bit more about how he tracks that. And maybe like to your point, the great follow up is how much did they spend and who did they give it to? In campaign spending. I think that's a good follow up on where their money went. That'd be at least an interesting article. I doubt this story, besides you and me and about all the lobbyists, are the only ones that probably read this article.
That's exactly right.
I wouldn't think it's a barn burner for the average Oregonian, though. So
now, if this wasn't publicly available data that accidentally got leaked, like somebody emailed it, then boom, massive story. But that's one of those things where it's like, I think this is a strategy where you have this. You've heard of the term like security by obscurity.
Yeah.
If you just take all this stuff and make it as like boring reports from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, you take something that could be considered, the idea that it's not public information basically makes it exciting. And since this is just a public information that anybody can download, it's like, oh, non-story. Who cares? That's not fun, right? And so, I mean, that's why I think also, like, as a journalist, it's easy to report on these stories with data and whatever, but they're not exciting. You got to get something juicy. And that's where like Willamette Week really forces on taking, I think, has shown a focus on taking those public documents and figuring out what's the story that you can't see in the document itself that the document's actually pointing to, and reporting that. And that's what really separates them from the rest of the journalism that's still the little journalism that is left here. Yeah.
Oh, poor Carlos. You just tag it on him.
I'm just saying that that's the reason this story isn't as exciting as other stories. So hey, go out there and find the stories, guys. There's great stories out there.
Yes, there are. And Carlos can make it up, because I sent Bill Oram an email at the Oregonian to come on and talk about the Trailblazers. Mm-hmm. And how they're not going to be the Failblazers anymore, and then kind of talk about sports and the baseball team antics and all that sort of stuff, and his take on, where the Trailblazers go from here. Is this a good deal? Is this a good owner? Is this the right group? Is it, all those sort of things, which I think is interesting, because the Trailblazers have just, for being our only pro team that we have in Portland, it's got such a storied history and all the things with the Trailblazers here, and not winning a title since '77 and all that sort of stuff. But I think there's something fun about talking about how the politics and sports kind of intersect.
Well, and a great example, Chris Dudley, a famous Trailblazer player, ran for governor, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those big intersection points. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
put him on the candidate tracker, because I've heard.
Oh yes, okay. You had told me this before. I'm pulling up the candidate tracker right now because that's one of the next places we need to go. So speaking of all this lobbying money that people spend on stuff to lobby these candidates, well, there's candidates, and candidates are starting to make their. He is on it. He's already on it. Look at that.
Look at us.
There's lots of candidates that are announcing, lots of candidates that are rumored. So, Bryan, have you been tracking some of the latest news, and are you able to give us any critical updates?
Well, of course I track everything. What are you talking about? Reagan, I think that, not the biggest one. I think the one that's most well known is Tracy Kramer announcing for Kim Thatcher's seat, and she got Kim Thatcher's endorsement. So that means that, she's been doing some conversations, and I don't believe Kim is planning on stepping down. From all my conversations and thoughts she's got no desire to step down. So we're not going to get an early replacement to try to give her a head start. I don't see that happening, or at least I haven't heard that at all. So that means it should help clear the way, I think, in the primary for Tracy to have Kim's endorsement. I think Kim's pretty well known in that Kaiser, Salem Woodburn area. She did well in that last campaign, won by 5 points in a -6 district. So that's really that independent, vote kind of moves to the right, 10, 12 points, depending on, how much of the D's and the R's go which way. But the reality is it swings about 10 points our direction, or it did in 22. I would say it would have been a winner again in 24 if you would take the Mannix and the Kramer numbers from the House races and just apply. It would have been tighter, but I think she still wins. So I think depending on who Kramer gets as an opponent from the Democrat side, which I would assume they're going to try to get, if you're the Senate Dems, you're probably trying to recruit Munoz, who will beat Tracy Kramer in the House District 22 race. So if you're Senate Dem recruiter, which I don't know who's doing the recruiting right now, maybe
Ben Bowman.
Yeah, for the Senate Dems, probably not. It's probably.
I'm sorry. Yes, you said Senate.
Yeah,
yes.
It's got to be Senator Jama. I mean, he's in charge of that. He's the majority leader, and his staff. So it might be Kean and some of those guys. So we'll see if they can convince Munoz, or can Ben convince Munoz to stay and retain House District 22, right? And that's usually the fight that we tend to have amongst chambers is Senate folks like me, who the first thing you do is you go and recruit that representative if you like them. That usually is who you're going to go to first. And so if you're a rep who isn't getting recruited, you should assume you are not liked, right?
I laughed really hard at that because I remember my dad.
Not necessarily true, but
not necessarily true. Sometimes they've already decided they just want to stay put in the house, right? I remember my dad making a joke in an event. It was sort of a joke, but it also sort of clearly wasn't a joke, where he was talking about how you and him had gone and recruited a bunch of House Republicans to run for these newly drawn maps, right? In 22. Yeah. And then he said Representative Breeze Iverson got elected leader and put a kibosh on any more recruitment from the House. And that always cracked me up because I thought that was funny, because I could see where it was like, that's not true at all. And then also at the same time, hey, we're supposed to be a team here, and I get we need to send some people to the Senate, but I also need some good candidates to stay here and teach all the new people.
Guess who had to go recruit all the House members in 22?
Yeah, you did. You did.
For free.
Shot yourself in the foot there, huh?
Yeah, you did it all for free too, Reagan. Vicky just yelled out it wasn't free. I think it was, that tends to be the problem. So whether the Dems do it or the R's do it, it's a normal thing.
Yeah.
They also try to do it in Congress, right? We have less number of seats to worry about, but many of the bigger states, like they're dragging people out of the legislature all the time. And the reality is that if you want a seat on some level, you have some level of notoriety. You hopefully have some level of base support, whether it be fundraising, email bases. Like you just have this base that you can build off of. And when you pluck somebody out of nowhere to run for something like Congress, it does make it a lot harder because you're jump starting from zero. And the only ones that tend to be successful is self-funded, billionaires like Doug Burgum and stuff who can just go run for mayor of North Dakota. Like, hey, I'm great. Now I'm just going to go be, the governor, of North Dakota. And then he just wins because he can dump $100 million into his own race. Right. So fundraising does it. And he's probably got a bunch of donor friends that gave him a bunch of money too. So recruiting in that level is an interesting point with that. But I think with this one, though, with Tracy deciding to win, and I recruited Tracy in 22 to run for state rep, and Vicky and her won that seat. Tracy worked her ass off and flipped that seat for the first time in 22 years. And when we had a little bit of the pullback this last time, she came up 150 votes short. So if you're staring at that map, those two maps, and you say, okay, I could go run for House District 22 again, or I can go run for Kim Thatcher's seat, which is a 4-year seat versus a 2-year seat. Thatcher's seat clearly is a little safer than the House District 22 seat.
It's, again, a weird one. The Senate district is just more conservative than either of the two combined, and I can't explain that. If there's some weird ticket splitting and stuff going on, and I mean, it's Kim Thatcher. She's one of the more, conservative senators who's like raw. She's not careful about the issues she picks. Or she's raw conservative, hardcore. Yes. She had some name ID from Kaiser City Council, I think, and I think maybe some of those folks are and running for Secretary of State. I think some of those folks were interested. I think Kramer is probably going to mostly clear the field at this point, prevent people from filing. Maybe somebody will get in to try to build name ID for a future race, but I think most of them know the name ID is still left there. She has the benefit of maybe not going around and saying my election was stolen. I'm guessing that's not part of her stump speech, but people are going to remember, hey, we should have won this one. There might be extra oomph there that will help in a year when Democrats, I think, would really like to win this seat because they kind of would want to get it back because this is part of the region that Courtney had before, and it's his district number. And so I think they would like to have this one back, but they've also struggled to recruit a qualified candidate. They can't get Munoz. They may have that same problem again, which is just going to exacerbate the issues, make the margin worse. And so it's still not going to be an easy seat to target.
Hopefully they get Virginia Stapleton to run. I think she should run again.
Look, if you've got a podcast, you need content. And I think for her campaign was her content. So sign up for another campaign. And I'm sure that there are many people, might be House Democrats, I don't know, that would love for Senate Democrats to have an experience with Virginia Stapleton and really just enjoy that. Plus TikTok. I mean, TikTok needs content, right?
Yeah.
If you have not seen some of her videos, go watch them. They are something else.
Yeah. So the bad part for the House then is that, I'm sure that there was some conversation to try to get Tracy to run again for 22.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So the worst part for that, and it's a double-edged sword, right? So you get a good candidate for the Senate, which Tracy's a good candidate. I think she's hungry to get back in the legislature. I think sitting out for 2 years and watching the road go by makes it pretty hard for you, a few other people that happens to. And then I think you either get back in the game or you don't, right? You just kind of go away. And I think that Tracy's young enough, and it's close. I mean, she's got a young family, but I mean, it's literally like the second closest Senate district to the Capitol, like physically. To go there every day and go home, it really doesn't have. It's not fraught with all the problems that you have from, say, a Medford or an Eastern Oregon or something, where it's just really, really, really far away. So there's a lot of those pieces there, but I really think that the opportunity now comes is if Munoz decides to step up and run for Senate, you now have an open House District 22 seat again for the House. So then that puts now, 25 back on the chopping block for Republicans. The downside is both sides have to go recruit somebody new. And it's not to your point, it's not an easy seat to recruit for. I think Kaiser has more opportunity to recruit out of than the House District 22 one, because it's kind of a glob of Northeast Salem, a lot of farmland, and then, Woodburn. So it's kind of, there's just not it's not an easier scenario to recruit out of.
The people of Woodburn are deeply offended, Bryan, that you think Kaiser is just more important and better. Man, there's just a lot of we're really creating.
You said that, not me. So
enemies here.
I like making
one of the other things
that, Rick.
I think that is interesting about this whole situation is that if you're House Democrats, there's the potential that having an open seat in what you think is going to be a Democrat-leaning year is actually the better time for her to run for the Senate, as opposed to if she runs for Senate in a Republican-leaning year and now you lose both seats, right? So it's sort of, it could be good or it could totally backfire for them in terms of recruitment. So it'll be interesting to see who wins that battle, whether it's, Majority Leader Jama or Majority Leader Bowman.
That's the real battle. Right?
That's right. The Republicans are the opposition, man. The Senate Democrats are the enemy. Not necessarily Ben Bowman's words. I will have to ask him about that.
But Leader Drazen is, she's not going to get mad at Tracy for running for Senate, because that's just
no
thing, right? So the key is on the Democrat side is, can they convince,
Well, and the real question is, can she even be mad if she ends up running for governor, which we just had a report from Willamette Week, and then you found actually something pretty interesting. So Willamette Week reported that Drazen spent, out of her pack, it sounds like maybe, a bunch of money on polling. And so that polling is obviously, if it's expensive polling, typically means either you've done two things. You've either gone very wide or you've asked a lot of questions, or sometimes both. And so this is a polling amount that you could reasonably assume was spent statewide, not just in her individual House district, right? She probably doesn't need a ton of polling in her own individual House district, to be perfectly honest. Additionally, what did you find, Bryan, that sort of helped add to this potential rumor about considering governor?
Well, and she reactivated her Win Red account, which is our fundraising platform for Republicans that say Christine Drazen for governor, not for state rep. So I would definitely put her on the high side of the candidate tracker now for I think the poly markets now have her at an 80% chance of running for governor. I'm making that up.
Interesting.
I have no idea.
Oh,
there's no
I thought you looked. I was like, whoa.
Poly markets for political candidates. I wish we did. Like they did for the president, right? They had poly markets, which was kind of cool to watch the money move. Like, what would you bet on? Because I think that changes. If you ask somebody who do you think's going to win, and then you ask somebody who would you bet on, that that's a real indicator, I think.
Yeah. So if you go to winred.com on the homepage and then you click the Oregon icon and then you scroll down, you can see like the different national groups, the state party, a U.S. Senate candidate named Tim Skelton, Cliff Bentz, and then boom, Drazen for governor. Now it'll be interesting to see if they did that intentionally, or if they put it in the wrong category, or they didn't mean to, and now then they switch it out and move it back to state house until she officially announces, or maybe she doesn't even announce. So that it'll be interesting to watch that. I just scrolled down and there's friends of Josh Thorstad, who is a candidate for District 11 who as far as I know, hasn't announced his campaign, but there's his Win Red. So, see, this is where you catch people and find out what they're actually working on here. Some of these are old, like Kramer's is still listed under District 22, so she'll probably go in and update that here shortly. But
Yeah,
you can sometimes find stuff.
I was just talking to Winred too, and they do some of that cleanup work. So they go in there. They tend to do it more congressional stuff, and then they work their way down through it. So they first go up and update all the congressionals, and then they go back down through it. But there's a lot of people that aren't on there that you would think are on there. I mean, and I think it's just because their campaigns don't use WinRed, which is, if you're a Republican running for office, it'd be like a Democrat not using, what's their one?
Act Blue.
Act Blue. Yeah, it's kind of like people would be like, "You don't have an Act Blue account? What are you, stupid?" So. A plug for my friends at WinRed. Just if you're running for office and you're a Republican, get a WinRed account. You can still get an Anadot account. You can get both, but you'll look like shit if you don't. Somebody clicks on Oregon and they go, "Oh, I can't donate to you because you're not on WinRed." It's stupid. And I don't know. There's not how many times I've gone on WinRed because I've heard, somebody in Minnesota or Wisconsin or whatever, like a candidate on a podcast or something. And I'm like, oh, click on WinRed, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool, and give them $50 or something like that, or just because I think they're interesting. Or like you and I love to look at campaign websites, and somebody has a really good website, I'll kick them $50, $100 or something, just because it's kind of fun, especially if I don't care some other state. But it's fun to see that, and you generate some revenue when you don't really think you would. So back on the Drazen thing now, real quick.
Bring Balance to Salem has a WinRed even. I mean,
yeah, right. She spent $55,000 on polling.
Whoa.
So it's, when you said you either go deeper or go wider, that's deep.
That's both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Public Opinion Strategies isn't exactly the cheapest group in the book, but $55,000, you're not polling a House district for $55,000. I mean, that's just silliness. I mean, a House district poll shouldn't cost you more than like $8,000-9,000.
I think some days it can, depending on the pollster, it can cost 15 to 20, but I would say you can't get over 30 without being really either wasteful or doing a statewide.
Yeah. But it's fine. I mean, I guess if she's got the money, I mean, she had the money, so, why not? So, if you can, I guess do it to see, try to formulate a path, try to, work on a lot of messaging context that looks like it's, going to work. What's what is all the things in there? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff on Kotek, and, are her negatives really super high negatives? Do they hold water against a Republican? Like, do people just snap back if it's, a pro-life Republican versus, a hated Kotek? Like, well, they don't like Kotek, but they're still not voting for a pro-life Republican. So if you're doing a bunch of back and forth simulations and stuff with people, and I don't know, I have no idea if that was the poll, but you're either doing something like that, or to your point, you're doing a 2,000 person survey to get a real breadth of what the state looks like, right? You're not just doing 600 people. So.
Yep. Two more things I wanted to cover real quick. One, I saw an announcement from Darcy Edwards seeking re-election, which means she will not be a participant in, as you had said before, the District 16 Senate race. So that's still currently the Dietrich versus Bangs primary. So she continues in her House seat. I have pretty good sources also that are telling me two more things. The district, not District 11, but Senate District, is it 6 with Jamie Kate? Harbeck not running is what I have been hearing. I don't know if that's a surprise to you, Bryan, as part of the Jamie Kate campaign or not, but that is what I have heard. Also got an update from a couple of Democrats. Actually, appreciate the Democrats who reach out and tell us what's going on. Gelser Bluen seeking re-election, Hoyle seeking re-election as well. And then here's the biggest one. The thing that I actually think is noteworthy is sources told me that sources familiar with the matters are saying that John Lively has said to a lot of people that he is not intending to seek re-election. So that would be an open seat and a competitive one. It's a place Republicans have wanted to compete. But Lively's been considered a pro-business moderate, which means a couple of things. One, he tends to get crossover support from non-affiliated independents and even some Republican voters, I would suspect. And particularly important on the fundraising side of things, the business lobby typically gives against the Republicans in that race because they want to support Lively. And so typically when that pro-business person leaves, you see a more competitive race. So this was District 9. Kathy McEwen, pro-business kind of Democrat, was protected for a long time. And then as soon as she left, that race flipped. Now, this district, I would say, is more of like becomes just super hyper competitive. I don't think it automatically is Republican, but it's a really good battleground that Republicans have not had the ability to compete in on an even playing field because of that dynamic. And so Lively retiring would be huge for Republicans in terms of a pickup opportunity. And they need it because they want to break in the House the supermajority.
Well, one, you're right. I think about all things. And also, Lively's just a nice guy.
He is.
It's hard to beat, and he's a community guy, right? So like everybody knows him in Springfield, and it's just it's very, I mean, Alan Stout in 22, we came really close. We kind of tried to surprise him and swing that one and came within 2 points or so of that race. But John is a very, very formidable politician and a campaigner. I mean, the dude still runs every day. He's like 80. He drops down miles like it's nobody's business. And
he listens to Republicans in the building. I mean, Republicans will come to him with stuff. He gives them opportunities to hear and move bills and stuff. I mean, he's very bipartisan. Absolutely.
Yeah. He doesn't really vote with us, but I would say that he really helps the conversation. So he helps committee bills. He helps bills that he's working on to kind of bring them down to earth a little bit, which has been great. And he helps with the conversations, like you said. Now, Springfield, they didn't gerrymander this district, right? They could have ran a finger into Eugene like they did before, but they didn't because Lively was there and there wasn't really a need to in 21. So it did. So it's basically the city of Springfield, which is what the city has been asking for forever, is to have this be their own seat because the population is about right at where it needs to be. All the things that kind of fit that 70,000 or so people, 65, I don't know the population of Springfield. But I know that was the argument the whole time, and they got what they wanted. And so, and I know that's what the mayor of Springfield was asking for during redistricting, Sean Van Gordon. I believe. Yeah, I remember that's what he was talking about. So you guys got what you wanted. Now it's time to step up and go win that seat. And if it is an open seat, if John comes out and puts it out in press, and I'm thinking the other thing, the rumor I've heard is that there's a very progressive left-wing city councilor that wants to run.
Perfect.
For his seat. Yeah. So I
think that's a great idea.
I think it, to your whole point, it kind of helps our cause when you have, somebody like Lively who's been able to kind of bring some Republicans to his side of the fence, right? And hold that line of the moderates, and then still probably has a pretty decent voting record for the Democrats. But you bring somebody in that's further left to John is, and bringing in some of the rhetoric and some of the stuff that comes out of Eugene and Portland, kind of a recipe for winning, if you ask me.
All right. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I would expect Lively to not make a formal announcement or maybe final decision until after short session. Typically, people like to try to keep their leverage going into to try to help them, maybe pass another important bill or something like that before they tell people whether they're going to run or not. So it keeps it open. So my guess is we won't hear a lot of these until right before or right after short session. Sometimes they'll get up and give speeches and talk about how great it was to serve here. And now I'm leaving because it's about to get a lot worse because it already got worse.
They do tend to don't do that, don't they? They use this like they'll get up and rail like, either like the partisanship and blah blah blah, or I think that was even something Brian Clem talked about when he quit. Right? It was like, I just don't like this anymore. When he clearly was going off to go work on Coos Bay and a bunch of other projects that he had doing. So, but it makes sense. I mean, I guess you kind of want to do it. You want to leave people with your whatever wisdom you feel like you want to, give at that point when you're leaving the floor. On the other race, though, with Jamie Cade, I think that, that was an interesting call from Harvick's standpoint. I mean, he's not going to put out a press release. I doubt he would. I mean, who knows? Jamie's would be a formidable opponent for him. And then, but her race should get, you said that Win Red, that Josh Thornstead guy and Angelita Sanchez have both announced, not really announced. I don't think Josh has really announced, but he's on Win Red so that you're,
yeah, I'm going to make an assumption he's not going to do that. It's just like, well, I'll open a Win Red and see. Like, it's kind of a pain in the butt to do it. So you're probably going to run. He just, we happen to catch it public. Yeah.
From Sweet Home. So this is your district. So, I know we're not going to see Representative Knopp the second.
Yeah.
Because the first one,
really, the only reason I'm not running is because I can't serve with my dad. If my dad was still in the Senate, then I'd think about it. But now that I can't serve with them, it's like, what's the point,
Yeah. I did notice your dad changed his address to your address, so I don't know what that.
Nice.
I noticed that on something. I don't know. Could we get a representative back in the house?
He was out in Lebanon because he has some sort of stuff, and I need to get it from him. But he said our family's actually settled in Sotaville before Oregon became a state. So there's his claim. There's his claim. Look at it. Look, here it is. Here it is. We've lived in this district since before it was this district. So there's your residency. We'll see if the Secretary of State would approve that.
Your grandpa lives in Gelser Bluens. We should get him to run against Gelser Bluens.
I think we talked about that.
You could have like 3 Knopps on the ticket. Wouldn't that just be great?
Yes. There would be a story about that for sure.
He's got to be in her district, right? He's in Corvallis.
Yeah. Oh, he's in like Central Corvallis. Yeah, 100% he is. Yeah.
Or Finger McDonald. We could stack him. See if he does better than Jacob did against it.
Yeah, we kept pitching to Rayfield that we would run Bill Knopp against him, or get him to change his name to Tim.
Yeah. Bill Tim Knopp in quotes.
Yeah. Still, I think what's super interesting, at least in Oregon, is there's not a lot in Congress. There's just so little interest in running for Congress right now. And I don't know if that's just because Congress is difficult, if we think it's going to be a Trump backlash year. So they're like the good Republican candidates are kind of like, I'm going to sit this one out. I don't know what it is, but there's like zero news for Republicans on congressional side. So,
Washington, the third. So John Braun, who is the Senate Republican leader, and he's been the Senate Republican leader, I think, since dirt. He's been there a long time as the Senate Republican. I mean, I think it's just nobody else wants the job, so John just stays the Senate. I mean, he's a nice guy. I know John. I've met him a decent number of times on RSLC events and things like that. So he announced, and his name recognition's probably pretty good. I don't know if it's the most dynamic person that they were looking for the NRCC, because it wasn't any of the names they floated to me, the NRCC. I know they're heavily recruiting for CD5 or trying to. I've heard names from Shelley Bosar Davis. I've heard names from Patty Adair, County Commissioner in Deschutes County. We've also heard former Portland Trailblazer Chris Dudley's name being bantered around potentially for governor, maybe CD5. He even said somebody asked him to run for commissioner of Deschutes County. And I laughed and I said, well, you don't want a job. I mean, county commissioner's like that's an 8 to 5 job. I don't think people realize that most of those commissioner jobs, they're like you're the actual administrator. You don't just show up and check your email and do a meeting every couple of weeks like you do with city council. Like county commissioners actually have to do work. They run the county like every day for the most part. Most counties.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of people bantering around, but I haven't seen any PACs filed, which is usually one of the federal PACs. I haven't seen any of those. Same with CD6. To your point, yeah, it's been pretty quiet. I don't think anybody runs against Val Hoyle because unless you're just doing it for the fun of it, because they thought they had a good candidate last time. NRCC, was chumping around on that one. And
is Art Robinson doing anything? Because he could throw his name out there. He's not. I don't know if he's run for that district before, but he could try it.
Awesome.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Noah's off term, right? He could run. He could file. There you go.
They're now in Bence's district, so I don't know.
Oh, are they? I didn't realize
they're in Bence's district now. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they are. Maybe it might be right at that Josephine line. I'm not quite sure where that's at, but yeah, you're right. It's been very, very quiet. Nobody's filed for Boley against the corrupt Boley commissioner, Christina Stevenson. Nobody's, I think there's been a few names bantered around. I think Senator Bonham's name's been bantered around. I think he was bantered around for governor, but I mean, if Christine runs, he's not running. So,
yes.
And then Shelley's not running because neither of them would run against Christine. So, Shelley the problem is Bonham has to go away because of Measure 113, so he can't run it all again for Senate or House, so he has to do something else, or he has to go away. Right. And I think, and then for Shelley, she's in the House, so she's given her seat up because she's the other half of that Gelser-Bluen seat, so she's the red half of that seat, so she would have to give up her seat to run for something, and that sometimes can be a very tough thing to do.
Yeah,
for these people. And to your point, if people were having this idea that it's a tough Republican year, midterms normally are, especially the second midterm. A president is usually people have grown tired of that president and they want to vote for something else. So that's going to make it a little tougher.
Yeah, you're right. Cave Junction it's now CD2. I didn't realize that had moved. So
look at you! You were going to blow me up.
No, I was just double checking. I wanted to see. It's not far. The line isn't that far. There's that like bottom coast part that is 4, and then but you cross over the line and you go to what highway is this? But there's a highway out south, and you go from, I guess it's from Grants Pass area out down to Cave Junction to pick up signs, basically going to the California border. A lot of Republicans know this area. You're out there in the congressional district too. So probably part of that gerrymandering, that packing they were trying to do to pack all the Republicans into CD2. So I don't think, it doesn't sound like they're going to crack them to try to get an extra seat out of this map either. It sounds like Kotek said she's not interested in taking it up. So I don't know if the legislature agrees with her or not. We'll see in the short session. Maybe someone will file a bill to do a mid-session redistricting.
Oh, they doesn't want to file the Newsom, using all caps on his X account. I mean, what an idiot! Like he's just talk about screaming for attention. But
here's the thing: he's the only Democrat. He sees his opportunity to be the Democratic foil to Trump. When the House Democrats are absolutely failing, they can completely get beat by Mike Johnson every time, which is really putting a stomp on Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, even AOC hasn't been as relevant as she has been. Newsom is eating up a lot of that airtime to try to become the guy that takes on Donald Trump. And
I think she's grown tired. I think he gets challenged for Senate. I think you see AOC after him in the Senate. I think that's going to be the surprise on the Dem side.
And it'll be so much fun because if it becomes the new normal, I mean, there have been a lot of primaries filed against some of these old Democrats, and maybe some of them do need to be replaced. I have no idea. They're probably in heavily Democratic leaning districts. But if that becomes what happens in this midterm is Democrats churn and become more progressive, you can see how that may backfire in 2028, potentially. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, it all depends on where the economy goes, I think. I think if the bets that Trump's laid down,
Yep.
come to fruition, I think if he tries to mess with Portland, that some of that stuff, it can go both ways. Like, I think everybody outside of Portland kind of goes, yeah, clean up the dumpster fire. That's Portland's, but at the same time, it whips the base up. So
Yeah.
people in the middle, again, they don't pay attention. They're
Yeah.
going about their lives. But if you're living in the chaos, it does make it worse. So some of those seats, East Multnomah County, Clackamas County, like those ones could get shooken up a little bit more through a Trump intervention of some kind. I think is a little bit more. I think outside of that, I don't think it affects us as much, but within those areas, it could affect us.
One thing I just saw this tweet not that long ago, earlier today. Trump administration is discussing the U.S. taking. I'm assuming this is the federal government or the Defense Department or somebody taking a stake in Intel.
Yeah.
So, which I'm not sure. So this is kind of an interesting thing about Trump, and it's probably one of the reasons that Democrats call him a fascist. I'm not necessarily sure that he thinks of it as fascism. I think he thinks as the federal government as more of a business and and not a government. So he doesn't have a clear delineation in his mind between what's government and what isn't. And so he's like, well, the government will invest in making semiconductors and Intel's a good target because they're weak right now, and so they need to be bought. So if the government wanted to, like China, have a secure development of technology, and semiconductors are key for the key components, he may look at them as a target. And so I don't know if it probably doesn't turn Hillsborough into Trump country necessarily, but it definitely makes Trump more of a, because what do you do? And if you're an Intel and you're like the state rep out there, you're like, well, this is bad because it's a government takeover of industry. And I was like, well, that's normally the Republican talking point, but okay. And saving Intel and their jobs is bad. Okay, interesting. So it brings up a lot of really interesting discussion points.
Well, and the government has a history of, I mean, think about it. Obama basically took over the car dealership world. I mean, Ford shared with them. Had government investment. Mm-hmm. They had to, right, to invest in those car companies to keep them afloat during the downtime. So if it's in the national interest of us to have chips made for our AI, for the AI race, in America versus using China chips, there's a case to be made for that, So I don't know if it's the right move or not. I think you're on the right side. I think of where Trump's at. I think he looks at when he's president, he sees himself as a CEO and president of America, right? Like the company. And he thinks that all the parts of America are at his, and I don't want to say disposal. It's not the right way to put it, but it's like he can just shift the chess pieces however he needs to fulfill the goal that he's going after. And the board of directors is like Congress. You kind of pay attention to them, but at the end of the day, they kind of have to pay attention to you more than you have to pay attention to them. So he does look through life differently in a lens. But I think what I find fascinating about Trump is the guy that grew up with a silver spoon with daddy's money, all the sort of things, can relate better to a guy living in rural America in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, than any Democrat can. So the question, it's not what's wrong with Trump or all this sort of things. He knows what the working man is like. His McDonald's stuff, everything you think of, he is Americana. He loves America. And that is unbeknownst, cannot be disputed. You could dispute his philosophy, his direction, that sort of stuff, but you cannot dispute the fact that the guy loves America. And I think that's what cuts through. And I see everything that Democrats do that comes out of their mouth. It just feels like they hate America. And I think that we're not, maybe in Oregon, I don't think we go pro-America enough. We don't need to go pro-Trump enough, but I don't think we go pro-America enough. And really just say, this is what we're fighting for, and this is why. Because I think most Oregonians agree with kind of America type first policies, which would be a strong Intel would be a good America First policy, right? I mean, and it'd be great for Oregon if we had a strong intel.
Yeah, no, and that's what they were trying to do with the CHIPS Act, and so it'll be really funny to see Democrats if they poo-poo Trump's strategy of it, which is again a different kind of government investment. And taking a stake in Intel doesn't mean taking control of Intel, but whenever the federal government is giving you money, there is a sense of control. I don't have a lot of details about this, but you put here. Oregon's going to lose, the governor's office, and DAS put together some numbers on how much the big beautiful bill is going to slash federal dollars, and they say about $15 billion. Now, this is over multiple budget cycles. They're sort of doing they're doing the math over 3 budget cycles: the current one, the next one, and the next one after that, to make the number bigger, I think, as part of it. But it's mostly reductions in SNAP benefits and reduction in healthcare, particularly because, and I think these numbers will be different if Oregon decides to stop providing these kinds of benefits to illegal aliens, because there's federal policies now that say we're not going to give as much or help as much if you're going to distribute to illegal aliens. And so they've refused to make a change on that, and so now here are the consequences.
I couldn't agree more, and I think they're just trying to blow the numbers up to make it seem bigger. I don't think that actually helps their cause. I think that's actually hurting their cause. I think when people go, "Holy cow, you're spending $15 billion on illegal aliens."
And even if they're not, that's what it sounds like, and so it hurts them.
I think that messaging is different, because we know the Democrats care about money, right? I mean, that's their biggest thing is money, money, and then money. Those are their top 3 issues that the Democrats care about. So it's, how does the money flow to their NGOs, and how does the money flow to all of their programs that, they want to save the world with, right? So climate change and homelessness and, illegal aliens, Medicaid money to people that are 30 years old and healthy condition, but yet they need free Medicaid services.
And I'll send you this link, Brian, to put in the show. We can put them in the show notes, but they have like a whole chart here. So they lose $1 billion in federal aid in the current budget, which is 25 through June 30, 2027. Then they lose $5.7 billion in the 27-29 budget, and then $8.3 billion projected in the 29-31 budget. Now, the real question is like, okay, so is anybody going to ask the governor what she thinks we should cut at the federal level to get back to a balanced budget, to pay off the national debt? Weirdly, not a lot of questions being asked about that. Care. I don't think that's the main point, but somebody should ask it. It's like, okay, so there's cuts made, and if it's going to be used, if they're going to use any of the money to pay off the national debt, which the Republicans are saying they are. Do you pose that? I think that question should get asked at some point.
There's a chart. Debt, but I'm afraid that even Republicans in Congress have a hard time not spending money.
It's not very exciting to kind of take the country on a Dave Ramsey budget, No,
it's really not, and there's nothing fun to doing it. It's fun to show up back home and tell them the money you got them. And also there are a lot of wants in the world. I mean, there's a lot of wants in Oregon. There's a lot of needs, and every district has them. And I think it's hard when part of your job as a representative, whether Congress or in the legislature, part of your job is to bring home the bacon, right? Yep. I mean, they came up with that term for a reason. So, I think there's part of that, and because every district has needs, right? They have roads that need to get done. They got sewer systems that are old. They got bridges that suck. They got, you name it, problem, and they want to get it fixed. And so the pie is only so big, and so it's hard to find that wherewithal to not spend and to pay off your debt. Now, unlike states who actually have to, or most states that have to balance their budget, which has been good for Oregon, is why our credit rating is decent. We have to balance our budget every year. So the federal government doesn't have to, because so now they can basically borrow against, future earnings. And I think, thank God, our state doesn't have the ability to do that. Besides, they do some bonding and stuff, but Man, could you imagine how badly we would be in debt in Oregon if they could just go out and just borrow money like there's nothing?
Oh, it would be a total disaster. And even with the bonding, they have to keep the payments and the bonding capacity. There's a limit on the capacity. There's a limit on the range of how much you can spend, even I think on paying for the bonds. So yeah, no, they keep that very tight, and that's wise. I mean, because once you start, it's impossible to stop, and you'd be fully financing the I-5 bridge alone and all kinds of crazy stuff that they'd be doing.
Like 17 TriMets bridges going over the bridge, to reach everybody. All right, let's end it with our new segment that I'm going to introduce is This Week in Oregon Political History, Reagan. I thought this was kind of fun. And I have this book now that's a chronological 700-page of every session that's ever happened in Oregon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I thought what would be kind of fun is today, August 14th, marks a significant day in Oregon history, as it was on this day in 1848 that the Oregon Territory was officially created by the United States Congress. Prior to this, the region had been under a period of joint occupation by both the U.S. and Great Britain. I didn't know that. The situation resolved by the Oregon Treaty in June 1846. However, the formal establishment of the territory only occurred after news of the Whitman massacre reached Congress, providing the necessary impetus. So at that time, it was basically Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and parts of Montana and Wyoming. That was all kind of part of the Oregon territory. I thought what was interesting is like it only happened and we became this after people got crazy after the Whitman massacre reached Congress. I find that funny. So it probably took a week.
No, multiple weeks to go. If you had something that occurred in the West, it would take several weeks for that information to get all the way back to the East Coast. And so, and that's
changed by the time I got there.
There's that mural in the house of us receiving the notification that we'd been ratified and accepted as a state, basically, which also took, several. I think it took several weeks. I'm going to Google that real quick. But yes,
I thought that was pretty interesting. And then another couple of notes I thought were kind of funny. So in 1857, Oregon
5 weeks, just real quick, 5 weeks it took for notice of becoming a state to go from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. No telegraph lines out here.
So then from 1848 to 1857, we finally got a constitutional convention in the third Monday of August, 1857. The delegates approved the Constitution, and then we were able to finally become a state in 1859. I thought that was kind of cool to go back and see, and all that happened in August. And a lot of times they got together in August. This was kind of more of a bigger month for them, especially in the early years. And I'm wondering because it was probably easier to travel and all the things in August. So the creeks were down, all the sort of stuff. So it was easier to get around in August.
That would make some sense. Yes.
Yeah. Another one, August 1993, vote by mail trial for the first time. Oregon held the first statewide vote by mail election in the U.S. during August 1993. This was a significant political event, paving the way for the state's eventual move to all vote by mail elections and the downfall of Republicans. I added that last part, but yeah, lots of debate. And then the other thing that happened way back when is 1845 was the first special session we ever had in Oregon.
Ew.
This started on August 5th and ended August 20th. After they elected George Abernathy as the provisional governor. So that was the first special session. And I don't know how many have happened between now and what's going to happen at the end of August. And then you've always alluded to this one, but I thought this one was really fun. The longest ever session was the 72nd regular session at 227 days. And that ended August 27th, 2003.
Yuck.
So 227 days of being in that building in August, which would be horrible. So
And I don't remember who was talking about this, but basically one of the issues was that then Speaker Minnis was not on speaking terms with Senate President Courtney. And that's what drug this out quite a bit.
Yeah, that would have been, because you had two chambers that were not.
Yeah.
One was Democrat, one was Republican, and that man, those are probably some great battles inside there.
Absolutely.
The only other thing I put in here, but just because I thought it was kind of funny, was the record temperature high in Portland was 100 degrees in 2008. And I went back and looked, and there was, if you look at today's date and all the record temperatures, they were all somewhere around the upper 90s, going back to when they started recording record temperatures. So climate change is real, just so you're aware.
Thank you for that update.
They didn't call it a heat dome back then either, Reagan. And I don't think they had cooling stations, and they didn't have moving trimets that would be a cooling station for homeless people. That didn't happen in 2008.
Well, and was this still around the time when we were talking about climate change, not the heat domes and not everything getting hotter? They were still talking about the possibility of an ice age. I don't remember if that was over in 2008 or not, but
that was probably back in the low. The low for today was 47 in 1982, and they were probably talking about dinosaur age was coming. Can't believe it was 47 out, and that's just Portland. I mean, you get hotter weather over here in Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon and stuff, but Portland's what you get longer tracking data.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
interesting stuff.
I think basically everybody's caught up. I mean, there's not a crazy amount going on. Special session at the end of the month. We did hear the bill's has to start in the House because it raises revenue. And Przansky put in his newsletter that it's not going to be a one-day session, that the House is going to meet on Friday, and then you, Mr. Iverson, and your lucky Senate staff and senators get to meet on Labor Day. So congratulations to you guys. I will be having a barbecue and enjoying Labor Day, and you'll be working. So,
it's Labor Day. I'll be laboring. Yeah, I think the next one we should probably talk. Our next podcast, let's kind of dive into the nitty-gritty bill, and then
there's supposed to be another version of it with some changes, revisions coming. So it's a little early yet to talk about what the governor's proposing. I mean, they put it out there, but if they're going to make any kind of revisions, it's important to kind of know what they are going right into it.
Yeah, that's usually what we call the proverbial toe in the water. First blush, right? You throw it out there and see what you missed and see who you pissed off.
Exactly.
Go from there. All right. Well, have a good one, Reagan. Don't barbecue too much. It's bad for the environment.
Roger that. Thanks, Bryan.
All right. Bye.